My inquiry is, how can a narrative without a fixed meaning still get players to create their own interpretations and emotional experiences? In Folio 1, I was mainly interested in how the same event could be presented through different perspectives, and how perspective could influence or even mislead the audience understanding of a story. That's where the nursery project began. I designed 5 different point of views, each represented by a cube. At that stage, the project was barely interactive. Players could enter a perspective, perform a simple interaction, and then leave. By the end of Folio 1, I still had not fully developed all 5 perspectives. However, conversation with mentors made me realize that the project felt hollow. It had no real destination, and players had little reason to explore. I began asking different questions. How can players feel confused without feeling lost? How can their behavior be guided without obvious instructions? And how can the event itself become less important, even in a story about murder? After many weeks of development and several visits to debugging hell, my inquiry gradually shifted into what it is now. Looking back, the project evolved from a simple experiment about perspective into something much closer to narrative. At this point, it feels less like a game and more like an interactive performance. The project still revolves around multiple perspectives, but I become much more interested in how each perspective could shape emotional experiences. Different visual style, movement systems, interactions, and camera behaviors were used to make each point of view feel distinct. Some perspectives appear playful and harmless, while others feel unsettling and unstable. Rather than simply showing different versions of the same event, the perspectives become tools for shaping how players interpret the space and what they believe is happening. I also designed the interaction structure. Originally, all 5 perspectives were available from the start and had no connection to one another. Players often had no idea what to do next. To solve this, I introduced clues that link 2 perspectives together and gradually unlock new areas. By controlling the order in which perspectives appeared, I could also control the order in which players encountered certain ideas. The first perspectives feel strange, but relatively harmless. More disturbing perspectives are only revolved later, allowing suspicions and curiosity to build gradually. This became an important part of the project. Rather than presenting answers directly, I wanted the players to constantly search for meaning and construct their own explanations. At the same time, I introduced a chapter structure using film reels and projector. This framing suggests that story has already happened and is simply being replayed. However, the ending challenges that assumption, turning the narrative into a circle rather than a complete event. Sound design played a similar role. Rather than simply supporting the visuals, sound was often used to reinforce moments of tension, violence, and uncertainty. This project made me suffer a lot. I wanted to do far more than I actually knew how to do, which meant I was constantly running into the limits of my technical skills, the ability of expression, and imagination. One topic that repeatedly came up during mental discussions was the cubes. People ask why they existed and why they had to be cubes. More symbol-like objects might have been better at guiding players or communicating meanings. Honestly, they were right. But I didn't want the players to enter a perspective already carrying assumptions about what it meant. A cube is just a cube. It doesn't point towards any specific interpretation. So, I was too stubborn. I kept them. Narratively, I also struggled with abstraction. I wanted the event itself to become unimportant. Who died? Not important. Who was the murderer? Not important. What actually happened? Also not important. The challenge was, if everything became too abstract, players became lost, and sometimes even I struggled to explain the project. Eventually, I realized that the story did not need to become more complicated. Instead, it needed stronger contrasts and broken expectations. A victim could become a perpetrator. A toy could become a weapon. A story that appears finished could reveal that it has only just begun. The biggest challenge definitely was technical. This was my first game project, and as more systems were added, Everything started fighting with everything else. Translations broke, Shida behaved strangely, and the interaction stopped working. The worst and also the best thing is I played Superliminal and immediately decided that I need a portal system. I wanted it, so I made it. The first version worked, but it looked terrible. I spent days trying different solutions before finally achieving the effect I want, but those days were really, really painful. After I made it, a completely unrelated bug appeared. I added a background music, then the system started launching the player into the sky whenever they walked through the portal. At that point, my emotional state matched the background music perfectly. Completely nihilistic. The two references that influenced this project the most were What Remains of Edith Finch and Superliminal. What Remains of Edith Finch inspired my interest in perspective and narrative, particularly the idea that truth is often less important than the way a story is told. Superliminal influenced both the atmosphere of the project and my unhealthy obsession with portals. I realized that I really enjoy creating the feeling that something is not quite right. I like misleading players. I like making them think they understand what is happening, only to put the certainty away later. The project is still unfinished. I designed 3 endings, but only completed 2. The finished ending is something I would still like to complete in the future, but beyond that, I think I want to continue exploring this kind of narrative. Not necessarily a story with answers, just stories that encourage people to keep looking for them. For now, thank you for your watching and listening. Thank you to confusion. Thank you to misunderstanding. And thank you to being fooled.